The runway lights blazed, the music pounded. Jourdan Dunn, the brown-skinned girl from the working-class district of Greenford, stepped out to open the Burberry show. Each stride cut through the front-row crowd, her piercing gaze locking every camera in place. Few knew that just a few years earlier, she had been a lanky schoolgirl teased for her height, queuing for fast food, uncertain about the future. No one in her family had ever set foot in the glamorous world of fashion. A chance encounter in a shopping mall would open a path no one imagined, a journey to break racial barriers, to fight for her place on the runway, and to become an emblem of pride and resilience in one of the most unforgiving industries, a journey that, like many stories of the 90s Supermodels, would reveal the dark side of fashion. Jourdan Dunn was born on the 3rd of August, 1990, in Greenford, a suburban area in West London. Greenford was not the kind of place where fashion dreams were nurtured. It was a densely populated working-class neighborhood, home to immigrant families from the Caribbean, Africa, and South Asia, living in tightly packed rows of modest houses. Jourdan grew up in a small apartment with her mother and 2 younger brothers, after her father left when she was still a child. Her mother, Dee, a strong Jamaican woman, worked full-time at a primary school. She had little time for herself, but she did her best to make sure her children never went without. For Dee, fashion belonged to another world entirely far away and unreachable. Jourdan, however, was captivated from an early age by the glossy pages of fashion magazines she stumbled upon at the local corner shop. The models, with their shining hair, lavish gowns, and flashes of light, seemed to belong to a dream made real. Yet Jourdan's childhood was far from glamorous. Tall for her age and strikingly slim, she became an easy target for teasing. Classmates nicknamed her Giraffe, or Walking Stick. She also became aware, at an early age, of the unspoken prejudice that lingered in British society. Offhand comments like, "Black girls don't become supermodels," etched themselves into her memory, a quiet warning that her dream might be nothing more than a fantasy. But Jourdan was not someone who accepted limits easily. She joined school sports basketball, sprinting turning her height into an advantage. After school, she helped her mother with shopping, took care of her brothers, and sometimes picked up odd jobs. Her life was simple, but there was an undercurrent of pressure to stay out of trouble, to grow up faster than other kids her age. Her home was filled with the sounds of reggae and laughter, but also the weight of resilience, the kind that immigrant families carried. Jourdan saw her mother work tirelessly without complaint, and it instilled in her a quiet determination. Still, deep within her was a hidden spark, an unshakable feeling that she was meant for something more. She didn't know how or when, but she believed that one day she would stand in a place where the whole world would be looking at her. And when that day came, she would prove to everyone and to herself that a Black model could be the face of global beauty. Her teenage years were a mix of the ordinary and the extraordinary waiting to happen. While her friends were content to think about weekend plans, Jourdan found herself drawn to something undefined but magnetic, a world that lay far beyond Greenford's streets. She didn't yet realize that this pull was toward the same world where the 90s Supermodels had once reigned, a world that could be intoxicatingly beautiful but also carried the dark side of fashion. In the years to come, that pull would lead her straight into the heart of that world, and from there, her life would change forever. It was the summer of 2006. London was sweltering, and shopping malls were packed with people escaping the heat. 16-year-old Jourdan Dunn, fresh out of school for the day, headed to the Shepherd's Bush Primark with her friends, a familiar hangout spot for local teens. She had no idea that within minutes, a chance encounter would completely alter the course of her life. Between racks of affordable clothing, a woman approached her, eyes scanning her from head to toe. She introduced herself as a scout from Storm Model Management, the same agency that had discovered Kate Moss. Her question sounded almost absurd. "Have you ever thought about becoming a model?" Jourdan laughed and answered honestly, "Never. I don't even know how to walk in high heels." But the scout was persistent. She handed Jourdan a business card and encouraged her to visit the agency's office. That evening, Jourdan told her mother about the encounter. Dee was skeptical. The fashion industry was an unknown world, and she worried about its dangers. "You're still in school. Don't let something flashy distract you," she warned. After some persuasion and realizing how rare an opportunity this was, Dee agreed to accompany her daughter to the meeting. At Storm's office, Jourdan had her first Polaroid photos taken. She wore a simple t-shirt, jeans, and no makeup. When those images were sent out to photographers and casting directors, the feedback was immediate. "This girl has a cinematic face. Her eyes are powerful, and those legs, perfect." Just weeks later, Jourdan booked her first casting for a small show at London Fashion Week. Walking into the casting room, she was surrounded by dozens of blonde, blue-eyed girls, the default look of the international runway. Nerves surged. "I'll be cut right away," she thought. But once she started walking down the narrow wooden runway, back straight, eyes fixed forward, the fear dissolved. For the first time, she felt a strange new confidence surge through her, the kind she had never known in Greenford school halls. The casting directors asked her to walk again. Moments later, they offered her the job. It was the beginning of something much bigger than a teenage girl could fully grasp. In the months that followed, she began doing test shoots, learning the rhythm of photo sessions, the bursts of the camera flash, the strange silence between poses, the murmur of stylists adjusting clothes. Jourdan quickly realized that being a black model in London and soon in Paris, Milan, and New York meant she would have to work twice as hard to be seen as equal. She noticed how makeup artists sometimes didn't carry the right foundation shades for her skin tone, or how she'd be the only black girl in a lineup of 20 models. Still, she embraced the challenge. If the 90-second supermodels had carved their way to the top in an era when diversity was barely acknowledged, she was determined to push the door open wider. This wasn't just about walking a runway. It was about claiming space in an industry that had long resisted change, one that still carried traces of the dark side of fashion in its exclusionary practices. From that first casting, Jourdan began to understand that modeling wasn't going to be a passive journey. It would demand every ounce of her resilience, discipline, and self-belief, and she was ready. Within just a year of signing with Storm, Jourdan Dunn's name began appearing on major casting boards. In 2007, she made her international debut walking for Marc Jacobs at New York Fashion Week, a dream milestone for any newcomer. The sensation of stepping onto an international runway, with rows of Vogue and Harper's Bazaar editors, legendary designers, and hundreds of camera lenses watching, was pure adrenaline. But this was only the beginning. In 2008, Jourdan made history, becoming the first black model in over a decade to walk for Prada, a brand notorious for its rigid beauty standards. That moment was more than a personal victory. It was an industry shockwave. Fashion media hailed her as the face changing the game. From that point, her career sped forward like a film on fast forward. Jourdan graced the catwalks of Chanel, Dior, Louis Vuitton, Balmain, Givenchy, and Alexander McQueen. Vogue UK put her on its November 2008 cover, a rare solo cover for a black model at the time. It wasn't just her legs or striking face that set her apart. It was her runway presence, a walk that was powerful yet fluid, eyes locking with the audience, and a chameleon-like ability to embody any style, from the grandeur of haute couture to rebellious streetwear. Photographers called her a blank canvas that somehow brings her own colors. Behind the glamour, the reality was grueling. 3 flights in a single day, sleeping on planes, changing outfits in backstage trucks, eating a protein bar minutes before a show. Jourdan often described Fashion Week as running a marathon inside a dream, with no room to slow down. Still, the rewards were undeniable. She became the face of major campaigns for Burberry, Calvin Klein, YSL Beauty, and Maybelline. She formed friendships with industry icons like Naomi Campbell, Adriana Lima, and Karlie Kloss. Naomi once said, "Jourdan has the pride of a queen and the heart of a fighter." The years between 2008 and 2012 marked her reign, a time when Jourdan Dunn wasn't just a successful model, but a living example that a black girl from suburban London could command the most prestigious runways in the prestigious runways in the Martel but a 6x2 world. In this era, she joined a lineage that included the 90s Supermodels, women who had dominated the fashion scene with individuality and defiance. Yet, unlike many before her, Jourdan's path was a constant balancing act, celebrating triumphs while navigating the subtle but persistent barriers of an industry still wrestling with diversity. She was becoming more than just a model. She was a symbol of possibility. But as the years ahead would prove, even the brightest stars in fashion aren't immune to the shadows, the dark side of fashion, that can challenge even the strongest. In fashion, where trends shift every season, survival depends on constant reinvention. Jourdan Dunn not only survived, she distinguished herself by doing what many of her peers avoided: speaking out. From the early days of her career, she addressed racism in the industry openly. Jourdan once tweeted, "I got canceled from a show because they already had enough black models. Imagine if someone said they had enough blondes." The post went viral, sparking conversations across fashion forums. For many, it was the first time they had considered how blatant and systemic such discrimination could be. She also began turning down jobs. Jourdan rejected campaigns that reduced black beauty to stereotypes or fetishized it in uncomfortable ways. For her, a high paycheck was not worth compromising her dignity. "I don't want my son to see me in a picture I'd regret," she explained. In 2013, she surprised her fans by launching Well Dunn, an online cooking series she produced herself. Beyond catwalks and photo shoots, she wanted the world to see her as more than a model, someone who could laugh, cook, and connect. The project broke the "only a pretty face" stereotype that clung to many in her profession. Perhaps the boldest chapter in her career came when she embraced motherhood in the spotlight. At just 19, she discovered she was pregnant. Instead of hiding or quietly disappearing, she chose to take a break and give birth to her son, Riley. It was a rare move in the high-pressure modeling world, where motherhood was often treated as a career ender. Just months after giving birth, Jourdan returned to the runway, her body toned, her presence sharper than ever. She proved that a model could redefine her career after motherhood, challenging the industry's obsession with youth and untouched beauty. Her openness extended beyond professional milestones. She spoke candidly about the struggles of balancing work and single motherhood, about her son's gluten intolerance, and about the lack of support systems in an industry that demands constant travel. For her fans, this authenticity was magnetic. They admired her not just for the covers and the campaigns, but for the way she stood firm against the invisible pressures of her profession. She was willing to be vulnerable, a quality that made her far more relatable than the untouchable image often associated with the 90s Supermodels. Jourdan's impact wasn't about the number of Vogue covers or the height of the heels she walked in. It was about the shift she represented, the refusal to conform, the insistence on diversity, and the idea that a model's career could have purpose beyond beauty. She once said, "If my career is only about making beautiful pictures, then it's meaningless. I want it to inspire someone to believe they can do it too." In many ways, this stance positioned her outside the industry's comfort zone, brushing against the dark side of fashion, the part that resists change, that punishes those who speak too loudly. But Jourdan had learned from her predecessors and knew that some battles were worth the risk. The spotlight of fashion has never been a straight, smooth path. For Jourdan Dunn, her peak years came with sharp turns and a few falls that tested her resilience. In 2010, at the height of her success, Jourdan was diagnosed with sickle cell anemia, a hereditary blood disorder common among people of African and Caribbean descent. The disease caused intense fatigue, pain, and potentially dangerous complications. The constant travel, shifting time zones, and erratic diet of a top model's life made managing her health even harder. On more than one occasion, she required emergency drips backstage just to walk a runway. At the same time, her role as a single mother added pressure. Her son Riley was diagnosed with gluten intolerance, requiring strict dietary care. Between long-haul flights and back-to-back shows, Jourdan had to balance being an international model with being a full-time mom. "I can't just live for myself anymore," she said. "Every decision I make has to be with my son in mind." Then came 2014, when an offhand joke during a live stream stirred controversy. Meant as a playful remark about a fellow model, it was interpreted differently by viewers and ignited backlash online. Jourdan quickly apologized, explaining it was taken out of context, but the damage was done. A few campaigns were paused or quietly ended. It was a reminder of how swiftly a public image could shift in an era where every word lived forever on the internet. By 2016, industry observers began asking, "Where is Jourdan Dunn?" Her runway appearances dropped sharply, and her presence in major campaigns faded. Rumors circulated. Was she tired of fashion? Was she being edged out by younger faces like Gigi Hadid and Kendall Jenner? The truth was more personal. Jourdan chose to step back partly for her health, partly for her family, and partly to pursue new creative avenues. She began focusing on streetwear collaborations and sneaker culture, tapping into a different side of fashion less bound by the rigid rules of high fashion. These ventures allowed her to work on her own terms, but they came with less visibility in the traditional fashion sphere. For the casual observer, she had disappeared. For Jourdan, it was a conscious decision to move away from the exhausting pace that had defined her early years. Her choice to slow down echoed the experiences of some 90-second supermodels who had stepped back from the industry's relentless demands. But it also reflected the dark side of fashion, an industry that often struggles to accommodate the real lives and health needs of its talent. Jourdan's absence from the high fashion frontlines wasn't a fall from grace. It was a recalibration. Yet, in fashion's fast-moving memory, even a short break can feel like an eternity. And for someone who had once been on every major runway in a single season, the contrast was stark. She remained admired by her peers and her fans, but the crown of runway queen had shifted to a new generation. Jourdan seemed at peace with that, a sign that she had found value beyond the catwalk's fleeting applause. Jourdan Dunn has never formally said goodbye to the runway, but she no longer chases the relentless schedules of her peak years. She now chooses appearances with intention shows and campaigns where she can champion diversity and equality in fashion. Her 2008 walk for Prada, breaking a decade-long absence of black models on that runway, remains an iconic moment in industry history. Jourdan opened a door that had long been closed, challenging outdated beauty standards and making space for those once overlooked. She once said, "I don't want to be perfect. I want to be real." That perhaps is her greatest legacy, inspiring young women to believe that they too can stand where she once stood. And the question still lingers. If Jourdan Dunn were starting out today, would the fashion world truly be ready for her from the very first step?